Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Directors Seminar for this week. I'm Professor Henrietta Moore, and I'm the founder and director of the Institute for Global Prosperity. And it's lovely to see you all here. I want to start by reminding us all that the autumn series is about entrepreneurship and prosperity in extreme contexts. And it's my very great pleasure this evening to be welcoming to the IGP Dr. Silvia Dorado-Banacloche. Dr. Silvia Dorado-Banacloche is an associate professor of management at the College of Management, UMass at Boston. She's also senior editor of organization studies and a board member of the DPI Group, a large and diversified social enterprise devoted to generating employment for individuals with disabilities. Now, in her research, Dr. Dorado has explored various issues to do with management and the challenges of social enterprises and how such enterprises may engage with what are called grand challenges. And grand challenges are ambitious, but hopefully achievable goals that harness science, technology, and innovation to find solutions to the difficult and complex problems of our times. She's published on these issues in many of the top journals in management, including Business and Society, the Journal of Business Ethics, the Journal of Business Venturing, and the Journal of Development Entrepreneurship. Dr. Dorado-Banacloche received her MA from MIT and her Ph.D. from McGill University, and we're delighted that she's with us this evening. So she's going to talk to us, I think for probably about 30 minutes or so, on the theme of standing on the shoulders of giants, connecting current and past research on grand challenges. And so the talk will explore, as I've suggested, how businesses engage with the complex social problems currently known as grand challenges. It will examine the concepts that preceded the term grand challenges, their connections, and the diversity of perspectives they offered. The talk will identify a number of types of obstacle to realizing success, including governance obstacles, hindering engagement, and sense-making obstacles limiting ideas of ideation of novel and creative efforts. And it will also explore curation obstacles which precede engagement and define which problems can receive social attention or do receive social attention, and adaptation obstacles which create uncertainty over workable solutions and bias the momentum of social systems towards the status quo. So the aim is to provide us with a broader view of the obstacles defining grand challenges and open new pathways and underexplored levers by which to understand and influence business engagement with complex social problems. So welcome indeed, Silvia, and may I offer you the floor.
Thank you so much for your kind invitation. And I wish I was there. You know, it sounds like this is an amazing institute. You're doing great work. So thank you so much. So let me first work out the logistics. And so right now you're supposed to be seeing a lovely view of the Boston coast.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm hoping to be able to see you. So let me move things around so I can actually see the room. And now I'm going to open the presentation and share it. So now you're supposed to be seeing a slide shows you know, the theme of this fall semester speaker series. So when I was invited to do this talk, I wonder what topic could I speak about, and I decided to speak about this project, you know, this paper, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, which is a very recent paper. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the origin of this project, as to, you know, why me and my colleagues decided to do this paper, to write this paper. So I don't know how many of you are aware or not of you know, the life of the academic doing research in these kinds of topics. And the life of the academic doing research, we frequently feel rather frustrated, thinking that maybe the connection with practice is not as tight as it should be, and wondering whether we should be on the front lines or closer to the action. And so what is the value of academic research in this area? So of course, we can all keep engaged the same way I do, participating in a nonprofit, engaged, but still, what is the value of the academic research? So we academics, again, so this community, we go to these conferences, talk with each other, and part of our current conversation had been around this new label of grand challenges. So some of us have been doing research in this area for a while, and the label of grand challenges is a fairly new label, and it has become a very powerful label because of several things. First, because it's a great label, which talks to you about the power of communication and language. I think prior labels might not have been that powerful. And also because it comes from practice. So I think through a Canadian foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation got kind of like got a hand on this term, which had been invented by a mathematician, Dr. David Hilbert, who used it to describe the great problems of mathematics, just saying, okay, well, if I list all the great problems of mathematics, then I'm gonna challenge all the mathematicians in the world to tackle these problems of mathematics. And so the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation similarly decided, okay, so can we just list the biggest problems? And initially it was focused on health, the biggest challenges on health, and call them grand challenges. And so that fits really well with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Can we just list the grand challenges, the big problems that we want to tackle, and that way direct efforts and attention? And maybe this will allow us to tackle problems, clean water, environmental pollution, poverty that has been with us for decades and decades. So, we academics were wondering whether this is a good idea or not. So yes, so we like grand challenges, but we do live in the world where we all just Google, and if somebody goes and Googles grand challenges, they don't find the prior research. We are subject to this keyword. It's not like you go and talk with experts, which is what we old-fashioned scholars used to do. We all just Google and we go to Wikipedia, and so we are slaves to the keyword. So if the keyword is grand challenges, what am I going to find? I am going to find 2003. I'm going to go back maybe to this Canadian health initiative. I may go back to Dr. Hilbert, but what happens with the knowledge that existed before grand challenges? So so that was our question. Did we lose something on the way by embracing this label, embracing this cool term, grand challenges? So that's the reason that we decided to write this paper. So working with these three colleagues, Nino and Tatsi, who is in Canada, Jill Purdy in the University of Washington, and Oana Bransai, also in Canada, engaged into this project. We gave it this title, following the quote from Isaac Newton, who said, I was only able to see because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. So, if we are looking for keywords, what are the giants that we are only referring to, or we're just referring to the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation? So we figured, so we're academics, we are very skilled at this. We can go back into our ivory tower. We can go back into our libraries and explore the question of whether we actually lost something on the way by embracing this label. So I'm going to share with you what we found. I'm going to share with you some conclusions associated with what we found. I'm going to ask you to choose your preferred label when describing these complex social problems, and then discuss the implications of those choices. So just sharing with you what we have done. Hopefully I don't mute myself, I'm moving something around. We realized that there's many many labels that have preceded grand challenges. We have talked about the complex social problems of the world using tragedy of the commons, wicked problems, grand challenges, problem domains, meta problems, social problems, ill-defined problems, messes. And this is just in management. So we actually just focus on the area of management, but actually management has been building on other social sciences. So most of these terms were actually incorporated from other social sciences. Something else that we found is that there has been all these labels, but the ones that have really caught on are these four. So the tragedy of the commons, wicked problems, social problems, and meta problems. And immediately we're like, yeah, no wonder we chose grand challenges. Okay, grand challenges appears to be a much more, less specific label than tragedy of the commons, more friendly to non-English speakers than wicked problems, far more specific than social problems, and far more obvious than meta problem. So grand challenges is a very cool label. But if you look at the research and you see, grand challenges started relatively late. So we have been doing research on this area before the 1980s, and it's only in the middle of the first decade of the in the second decade of the new millennium that grand challenges is growing, but it's really growing very rapidly. So we found this and began really studying these problems, and so we derived a number of conclusions from exploring all these papers and exploring all these concepts. The first conclusion was that we actually like the label of grand challenges, okay, and we like the label of grand challenges because it did something for us that previous labels hadn't done. So one of the difficulties of doing research on this area is distinguishing between regular problems that we all have and what are the grand challenges. And so grand challenges have been defined focusing on the obstacles that hinder the achievement of solutions. So we have a number of complex social problems, but there are specific complex social problems that are, if you want, more complex than others. And the reason that they're more complex than others is because we cannot rely on technology to solve them, or we cannot rely on having the right political party in office. So we cannot rely solely on technology to solve climate change. And we cannot, in the problem of poverty, government has been engaged and nonprofits have been engaged in this problem for many years, and it has not been solved. So there's something specific about these problems that makes them, we academics say, non-linear, that makes them, that hinders our ability to actually identify solutions to them. So we like the term grand challenges because the scholars that have offered a definition that instead of saying, well, grand challenges are complex problems, they actually are focusing on the obstacles that hinder our ability to alleviate, to solve these problems. So that was our first conclusion. Grand challenges, hooray, this is a good label. We can get behind this label. Have we lost something by embracing this label? Well, we have not lost at least two of the prior concepts, tragedy of the commons and wicked problems. So grand challenges, actually, the scholars that advanced this term actually build on this research. They built on the research of the tragedy of the commons, and they built on the research of wicked problems. So I am sure that you guys have, all these terms, but just in case, I'm going to go over them. Okay, so what is the tragedy of the commons? So the tragedy of the commons is the idea of having these grand challenges be originated because they are collective action problems. So this little cartoon is like saying, well, there is the last fish in the ocean. Woohoo! At least we beat the Russians and the Spaniards to get it. So it brings the idea that if you're trying to maximize your self-interest, you are not going to be able to tackle these problems, that there are problems that are originated in lack of coordination. So if you look carefully at the origin, if you do the job of the academic and find the origin of these terms, you find that the term originated in two separate streams of research. One's the research of Garrett Hardin sort of right-wing economists that are very suspicious of the state, and the work of Elinor Ostrom, one of the few women that have won the Nobel Prize, and then she won the Nobel Prize in economics. So Harding, collective action errors. Elinor Ostrom also defined this collective action action problems. Her focus was on the ground up and actually thinking how communities have actually found governance solution. And the idea of governance is the idea of finding a way in which we can coordinate our efforts to tackle a problem. So that image is actually the Tribunal de, sorry, I'm going to go to Spanish, Tribunal de Aguas de Valencia. So in the region of Valencia, which is a huge production of oranges for many, many years, for centuries, they have had this informal court. So that little circle, I don't know whether you see it or not, it's at the door of a church, and there's a group of people who are discussing, and what they're discussing is how are they going to distribute the water, which is a scarce resource in the area, among the different people, okay? And so they have found a way of sharing the water, a scarce resource, in a way that is acceptable to the community. And they've been doing this for years. So on the one hand, we figured out that we have collective action problems, but thinking through this concept, we know that we can actually do research and find ways in which we can tackle these collective action problems. Grand Challenges also captures the idea of wicked problems. And the idea of wicked problems is an effort by these scholars to differentiate from complex problems. So there are complex problems, and then there are wicked problems. And the specificity of the term is that we do not agree on even on the definition of the problem. I mean, right now, I'm speaking to the UK. So, I mean, your prime minister has had some difficulties defining what is it the problem and thereby what is the solution. So that's the kind of problem. Right now, we are in a period of uncertainty. There's high inflation. Politicians all over the world are trying to figure out how to tackle it, and they don't know. There's not a linear process. So, and they don't even know in the definition of the problem. Many media outlets, if you're following, they're all trying to figure out exactly what is at the origin of it. So that's the idea of wicked problems, and it's idea that is captured in Grand Challenges. So research on this area first comes from German and American planners, kind of like getting together and coming out with this term. It also comes from research on systems thinking, research on how computers work. So the research on how computers and how to program computers is actually also connected with this and behind this. There has been two branches of this research. One you may be familiar with, this idea of design thinking and how we can actually use art and media and representation and different ways of thinking about problems. And then a sort of like a critical perspective, just making us aware sometimes, and this is just a comment, COVID-19. No, it's not a nail. Let me explain it once more. So the only tool I have is a hammer. So it looks like a problem. So when we have these kinds of problems, the people, the incumbents, the people in power are going to choose their tools, are going to choose what they know how to do, regardless of whether it fits the problem or it doesn't fit the problem. So again, the wicked problem is a cognitive focus. The problem here in the tragedy of the commons was how can we coordinate efforts? Here is more on cognition. It's like, how can we ideate? How can we think new solutions if we don't even agree on the definition of the problem, if we are actually split, if the incumbents have more power than we do. So that's still within Grand Challenges. So we worried about nothing, kind of thing. So we have the tragedy of the commons has been captured, wicked problems. So even if you just do on your Google search and just search from Grand Challenges, you are still going to find and connect with this research. But we also found that there was two terms that were not captured in Grand Challenges, two labels that were capturing a whole other set of research that you were not going to be able to find it if you Google Grand Challenges. One is social problems, and the other one is meta problems. So, So the idea of social problems comes from a sociologist, Bloomer. And this sociologist sort of like tell us that some people define problems and then we all follow them, and it tends to be the people in power. So this is I don't know, a revealing quote from a couple of scholars following on the work of Bloomer, Hillgartner and Bosch, which, you know, they're talking in the late 80s, and they ponder, why do toxic chemical wastes in landfills receive more attention, discussion than dangerous chemicals in America's workplace? Or why so few weep the dying of the rainforest, okay? Why some problems receive a whole world of attention and legislation and others don't? And as an example, this is an example that touches me closely. So I've been doing research on the street markets. And so this picture is a chaotic, wonderful, huge street market in Buenos Aires, La Salada. And this street market is actually listed in the United States Department of State list of notorious markets, and it's listed in this, you know, blacklist because they sell counterfeit products. Okay, what the Department of State doesn't have is a list of the corporations that employ the vendors in that street market. So the vendors that are offering and selling those counterfeit products learn, design, copy those products by working frequently in slave labor conditions for these same companies. So we have been focusing on copyright violations in the street markets, but have not been focusing enough on labor conditions in sweatshops. So moving on to the next problem. So let me just kind of like step back a little bit. So we talk about grand challenges. Our problem with grand challenges is that we may not be able to step back and build on the shoulders of these giants. So we were able to do tragedy. We are capturing tragedy of the commons, and we're capturing wicked problems. We're not capturing the definition of the problems. Okay, we're not capturing sort of what precedes our understanding of a problem as a grand challenge that needs tackling. And the other part that we are not covering is that our problems are systems of problems or are meta problems. So this is just supposed to, like, you know, get your eyes a little blurry and confused. But if you choose any of these grand challenges and you want to map it, and you want to map what is the origin of the problem, you're going to come up with a graph that is as confusing as this one, okay? And how scholars have approached this has been in a couple of ways. First, they have said, okay, well, in any of these grand challenges, what we need is cross-sector collaboration. What we need is the government working with nonprofits, working with civic society, working with everybody, okay? And so these complex problems, can we bring everybody to the table? Can everybody bring their own perspective? Can they bring their definition of the problem? And can we create some common ground to then act from there? The other perspective has been connected with systems thinking, which I already mentioned on connection with wicked problems, and with research that is actually using ecology to make us realize that we live in open systems. And I'm giving you here the example of course, that is present in many of our minds these days, all of us, is, you know, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Well, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has pulled the rug under all these efforts that we were doing regarding climate change. So we are thinking, you know, about climate change, and now a political conflict undermines it. So the reason complex problems are grand challenges is because these connections exist. They cannot just be solved in an isolated manner. And so that we need this research that raise our awareness as to the systems that are connected with whatever problem we are tackling. Okay, so let me throw it back at you. Okay, so I'm gonna switch now to Chrome, and I'm gonna have a little poll. Okay, so let me see if I can transition smoothly. So my screen is all black. Don't worry about that. Now you're supposed to be seeing my screensaver. and now you're supposed to be seeing an active poll, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to get your cell phones out, okay? And use this this little square to join. It's not gonna download a software. It's not gonna ask you for a password. And I want you to start voting. You can vote for 2. I have like set it up to vote for 2. And one person was very effective, has already voted. I'm seeing here how many people are voted. I heard there's 150 people in the room. So, I mean, maybe not everybody has their cell phone or has run out of battery, but I'm going to stay here a little bit until I get a sense of which one is the one that speaks most to the people in the room. Okay. So I have 31. So it seems that wicked problems. So I guess you're doing a lot of design thinking maybe in the school. I wonder whether this would be different in working with people with different disciplines. If this was a political science, maybe it would all be tragedy of the commons. Come on, social problems and meta problems are gaining ground. Come on. Who hasn't voted? Who hasn't voted? Henrietta, can you give me a sense of the room to figure out when should I stop on the votes?
Yes, I will. I think you can go on for a couple more minutes. Some people seem to be having struggles with their phones. So I just see
okay.
Struggling with phones.
Yeah, those were the good students that had their phone hidden away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were the ones had to take it out of their pocket and then don't know where the camera is and all the rest of it. So just give them a second.
So it's stabilized at 103.
Yeah. I think that's probably all. I think that's probably roughly all we're going to get. We might get a couple more. So
okay.
Let's go with that, shall we, for the time being?
Sure. So, you know, it seems like this is a wicked problems room. I've done this before, and there's different you know results. So I'm wondering whether the training of the students makes a difference or not. Yeah. So I am gonna move on now. So I have 105 5 students. So now I'm gonna open my presentation. Oh, sorry, presenter view. Okay, so use a slideshow. So those are the presentation. A huge percentage. We were going close to 50% of you were lining up with the wicked problems. Sorry, the ordering here is slightly different. So so tell me the name you chose, and I'll tell you the obstacle that concerns you. So if you chose a tragedy of the commons, you are concerned about how people coordinate their efforts. If you were concerned about social problems, you are concerned about gatekeepers or the curators. If you are concerned with wicked problems, you are concerned about the sense-making processes, the cognitive process that prevent us from identifying solutions. And if you chose meta problems, you are concerned with adaptation, with the fact that we live in an open systems world, and things are always connected, and we cannot isolate the problems until we solve them, like they can do in the sciences. So if you were in the tragedy of commons, part of your company could be, this is an example, Mark Cuban. So Mark Cuban is this well-known celebrity entrepreneur in the United States who has been trying to solve tackling a grand challenge, which is that of medications being horribly expensive in the United States with a specific startup. I'm showing this example because it's very close. It reflects very closely something that I have been experiencing. So I am in the board of the DPI Group, and the DPI Group has a number of businesses. It's a non-for-profit, but we have a number of businesses. And one of the businesses that we have is actually an infant formula. So I don't know how many of you were following on the news that the United States was having tremendous scarcity of infant formula. People was not finding infant formula on their shelves. And interestingly enough, we had actually, we were approved by the FDA, the federal agency that allows you, when you're producing delicate products like infant formula. So we were approved for export of infant formula. And so we immediately turned around and said, oh, why don't you just approve us for the local market? I mean, the standards are exactly the same. And we couldn't get approval, even though we had manufacturing capacity to put infant formula on the shelves, even though we had contracts with Target, even though we had contracts with Walmart, we couldn't put our infant formula on the shelves. So that's one example of a governance system and a governance in the United States. Quite a bit of this is going on, in which government agencies are very interlocked with powerful groups in the private sector, creating a governance systems that undermines. And then you can have people, in this case, Mark Cuban, who is trying to revolutionize it by moving out of these structures. In the case of drugs, from a specific monopoly or triopoly to few companies, and actually bring in a system that will allow to lower the cost of medication. Many of you were interested on wicked problems, and so you're more interested on design thinking or other processes that may allow us to think out of the box and to define a solution. So I don't know whether you know about this or not, but I enjoyed it very much when I learned about it as a way of dealing with wicked problems. Is the approach of positive deviance, and positive deviance is a specific approach that was developed by the person quoted here, Jerry Sterling, and his wife Monique. Monique and Jerry Sterling, two French public health officials who were called to work in Vietnam with very little support. And so they were sent into the field, and they say, go and solve hunger in Vietnam, in rural areas. Go and solve hunger in rural areas in Vietnam. And they're like, we're just two researchers. What are we going to do? And so what they did is following this principle, try to find the minority people that were doing better. So following this principle that in every group, there are a minority of people who find better and more successful solutions to the challenges at hand, even though they have access to the same resources as the rest of the group. Their uncommon practices or behaviors allow them to flourish. So what they did is they actually did research. They went with their little notebooks, and so first they will go to a village and they will weight all the children. They focus on the children, and they would weight all the children, and they realized that there was children that were not as malnourished, and they were actually fine compared with the other ones. And then they interview the parents, and they follow the parents around to figure out what is it that they were doing. And they realized that these parents have slightly different behaviors. For example, one of the things that they were doing is that they were getting shrimp from the rice fields. Okay, so they were finding the shrimps, that was protein content that they were sharing in their household. So then they made these poor people who had figured out a solution to the problem, the leaders in their community and the teachers to the other members of the community, to actually improve the diet of these children. So, So when we're thinking of wicked problems and sense making, that we need to step away from the ivory tower, that we need to figure out that maybe the people involved have solutions, and that if these people involved have solutions, that these are the solutions that are going to be scalable, that we're going to be able to grow and make large enough to actually be able to tackle a grand challenge. In terms of social problems, so we advanced this label of curation. So thinking on the museums, many museums have huge collections, and these collections are in the basement. And then there's these people who decide what are the items in the collection that are going to become exhibits that people is going to see. So this is exactly the example that I gave you earlier. Now, how the United States Trade Representative, the Department of State has a list of notorious markets, and in this list, the presence of this list allows them to go to the government of Argentina or to whatever government and say, you need to raid this market, you need to close it, call the police to stop this market. But shouldn't we have in the United States a government which publishes a list of the corporations associated with the slave labor conditions that are putting these people in La Salada? Okay, so which one is the wicked problem here? And more importantly, thinking on this concept, who decides? Who decides which one is the problem? And if we're thinking to lobby businesses or to lobby governments, then we need to be knowledgeable and thinking about the processes that precede the definition of grand challenges, so that we can actually go to the Department of State and say, well, if you're going to have a list of notorious markets, have next to it, the copyright violation companies, whether or not they are engaging them or the subcontractors in conditions resembling slave labor. Lastly, this is a meta problem, the idea of adaptation, and I'm giving you here a picture of Tom's shoes. So I imagine that many of you are familiar with this, buy one, give one model that Tom Shoes made very famous, and the founder Blake Mycoskie, and of course he soon learned after creating Major Pain that you couldn't do that. That giving someone a free pair of shoes, all that was doing was undermining the shoe manufacturers of the area, making them close their factories, and thereby affecting employment and generating poverty. So that you need to think of the system. You cannot just say, oh, okay, so I want to do good for the world. I'm a bleeding heart. I want to use my money in a way that helps the poor. So I'm just going to give shoes away. That's simple enough. I can give shoes away. Well, you can do more harm than you do good. You need to know that that we are operating in open systems. So this is my presentation. This is the kind of like bringing it all together. So we like grand challenges. There is a risk in this world of just keyword searchers that we forget about important knowledge, and that's the reason we published this paper, and I'm sharing it with you here today. Because we need to think first. We like the definition, tackling challenges, but we need to think, of course, about the governance barriers that hinder engagement, the sense-making barriers that limit the ideation of novel and creative efforts, but also of two other areas that have been forgotten or that are at risk of being forgotten if we just embrace this label. So the creation barriers that precede engagement and define which problems receive social attention, and the adaptation carriers that create uncertainty, sorry, I was supposed to say barriers, create uncertainty over workable solution and biases us on the momentum of social systems towards the status quo. An idea there too is that frequently the solutions that we come up with to tackle grand challenges are the ones that advance the interest of the powerful or advance the interest that we're currently here, as opposed to the ones that revolutionize the system. So that we have to be highly aware that that not all the solutions will tackle grand challenges in a way that allow us to move forward, because we require a system change. So that's my presentation. Thank you so very much for listening to me, and I'm open to any question that you may have.